before he actually approached you, he's like texting me. He's like, dude, there's this guy with a tiny iPad, and I really like. What should I say? It's like, bro, it's like dating all over again. What the heck? What's happening?
Approaching a woman to ask her out. The key in so many things is vulnerability.
The problem is rarely the problem. The problem is the perspective to the problem. Right? And the perspective to the problem we can always control.
And put yourself out there, because you never know really what can happen.
Welcoming the challenge in your life as if you had chosen it, because it's a custom-made challenge for you from the universe.
What was really hard for me was separate myself from that moment and understand what was happening. And it's just slowing down to be like, we're okay. We're where we're supposed to be.
I looked at where I was today.
Yeah.
And I was in the present moment, and I did what the moment called for. Be of service to each other on this journey.
Thank you so much.
Anything else?
I'm just grateful, man. Coffee serendipity, it's a thing. I'm telling you, coffee serendipity, it's a thing.
Hey, I'm Luis.
And I'm Luis.
And you're listening to the Content is Profit podcast.
Let's go.
All right, I gotta exchange these.
Yeah,
muscle memory.
I'm just gonna
from the home
say,
studio.
let's avoid the fact that you pressed the wrong button, but it's okay.
We are back, everybody. Fonzie, what are we talking about today?
Today, we're gonna go all over the place. We're gonna talk a little bit on entrepreneurship, leadership, maybe a little bit of consulting, some previous life experiences, and of course, we're gonna try to dive into content.
I heard a rumor about a 2-minute video that has generated more business for this person than anything else, and I can't wait to dive into that.
I know.
Among other things, but
I'm sure you would like to know that. Like to know that.
So, Fonzie, how do you meet our amazing guest today?
We've actually talked about this guest in a previous podcast.
Yes,
right?
that
and
is right.
We've talked about the concept of serendipity and specifically coffee serendipity.
That's
and
right.
there was this time of my life, I still do actually, where, I go to work at coffee shops and
he's allergic to offices and studios
pretty
and
much
things, yeah.
And you get to meet some incredible people. Well, this person that we have today here in the studio with us today, we actually met them at the coffee shop, and it was also amazing. We developed an incredible relationship. We became tennis buddies, which I'm not gonna talk too much about scores. We'll see. He runs some meditation sessions that are absolutely amazing. I've been part of, and he's a very, very special friend, and I'm so excited to have him here.
I mean, apart from that, he overcame war, poverty, and family adversity, and got in the path of internal and external thriving. This is very important for all you entrepreneurs out there, right? Built and sold an IT company. Can't wait to dive into that. And built and launched Manifestations Capital to invest in mind, body, spirit businesses. I cannot wait. We talk about niche, right?
I know.
We talked about this.
I know.
And it's super exciting. I cannot wait to dive into this conversation.
That is right. So, without further ado, please welcome the one and only Charbel Zreik. What's up, Charbel? How we doing?
What's up, guys? Wow, what an introduction, man. Can I come back here like every other day just for this part?
Absolutely.
Kind of hype.
And I was thinking about it for the meditation sessions. We can just hype the whole thing up.
Hype it up.
It'll be like the energy spikes.
I love it, man. It's so good to be here. Honestly, I'm feeling a bunch of things. I'm excited, but I'm also feeling a lot of pride. Just from our connection at Bold Bean, Luis. It's been a couple of years now hearing you build this business, and now walking in here and seeing what you and Luis number 2.
That is right. Luis number 2 right there.
Sorry, Luis number 1.
OG Luis. It's fine.
Seeing what you guys put together here, I'm just feeling a sense of pride for you, man, and
Thank you.
Really happy for the progress. Amazing.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. I'm gonna walk people through the mental image of how we met, right? So there's this coffee shop at the beach, and I used to go there all the time. And honestly, I used to see you there all the time too. And you were sitting with this tiny iPad, I remember, with a Cotopaxi sticker on the back. And I was like, I like that brand, so he must be an adventurer, he probably likes hiking and whatnot. Yeah. And I remember that I just kept seeing you over and over again. And eventually I was like, I'm curious, what does this guy do? And usually that's my thought process when I see somebody a lot in coffee shops and whatnot, because I'm like, well, they don't really work out of an office. I'm curious what they're doing, right?
Yeah.
So I approached you one day and I was like, hey man, I see you here, quite often. You're like, yeah, I see you too. And I'm like, I'm Luis. Nice to meet you. You're like, I'm Charbel. Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
And that day we actually kind of like planned to meet another day and get to know each other.
Yeah.
And when you told me your life story and the things that you've done, I was like, oh my gosh, I literally came back running to my belt. I was like, dude, the guy that I just met at Bowlbean, out of all places, talk about coffee serendipity.
And every time I saw you, I was like, man, I think I like that person. Just energetically, I'm tuned into people's energies. I'm like, man, that guy's got great energy. But you know how we get. We're all so focused, trying to get something done. I'm like, at some point I'll have to connect with him, but always so efficiency-minded.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, the coffee shop is like my office a lot of times.
Yeah. Well, you don't know, Charbel, is what happened like before he actually approached you. He's like texting me. He's like, dude, there's this guy with a tiny iPad. And, I really, like, what should I say? What should I say? And it's like, bro, it's like dating all over again. What the heck? What's happening?
Approaching a woman to ask her out.
I was like, how do I meet people, right?
How do I actually, And, hey, surprisingly enough, I mean, that is a topic that we talk about on the show a lot is how do you put yourself out there and meet new people, right? Yeah. So obviously we talk about it in the concept of the show, the podcast, inviting people into your platform, right? Especially those people that maybe you look up to, maybe that you admire, maybe that you want to learn a little bit more from them and just have a conversation. And a lot of people are very intimidated to actually go and do the ask, right? Whether that's in a coffee shop, whether that's like in an online setting.
Yeah.
So obviously in your profession, right, your line of work, in a sense, you have to probably have a ton of conversations with a lot of people and find out, what's their story, what are they doing, what are they building, what's the value. How do you approach creating new relationships?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the key for me, the key in so many things is vulnerability.
Yeah.
Vulnerability, that sense of leaving yourself open. I think we've all felt it, when you feel like you're on the edge of your comfort zone and you know that if you do this next thing, you're going to feel vulnerable. Something's going to feel uncomfortable. And I think when you feel that, the key is to push past it and of course, you have to trust your intuition. Sometimes it's the wrong move. Sometimes it's like, no, don't do it. That's why you feel that.
Yeah.
But as you do it over and over, as you increase vulnerability, you get to see what's wisdom about not doing something versus what's pushing forward. So I think if you approach people and you're open and honest about why you're approaching, like, hey, I saw you sitting here and I just felt like you've got good energy.
Yeah.
Or, look, we both have darker skin, man. You're in the middle of Jacksonville Beach, Florida, and I was curious about your background versus mine. Yeah. I'm from Lebanon. Where are you from? Yeah. I think putting ourselves out there, being vulnerable about the intention, that's the second part that's also very important. Just intention, man, a big part of the reason why people don't want to connect before they know you is they don't know where you're coming from. Like, what does this person want? Especially I grew up most of my life in New York. Our set point is like, if you're approaching defensive, you want something. Yeah. You want something. So being very clear up front about your intention, Oftentimes the intention is pure, hey, I'm curious. Or like, for example, this morning I haven't talked to a friend in like 4 or 5 months and I want a favor from him. And I was thinking about, hey, how you doing? I'm like, no, I'm going to skip that. I was like, hey, I know we haven't talked in a while, but can I ask you for a favor? I wanted to lead with my intention. Yes. And I think if you lead with that intentionality and you lead with a clear, open intention, often it's not a bad intention, man. Because what's the worst thing? You're trying to build your business. You want something, but that's a good thing if you believe in what you're doing and you're working on a mission that helps the world. That's a great thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Every time I'm a believer, like a stronger believer on communication, right? And, the value of expressing your intentions up front. And we actually have a really good friend turned client that he talks a lot about AI, but it's not the AI that people think about. It's not artificial intelligence. He says AI is attention and intention, right? And being present with other people. And I think is that what you're talking about, right? Like expressing that intention up front. And that's how we have approached, honestly, most of our relationships when it comes to the podcast and with the show, instead of, even if it's somebody that we don't know and is, higher up in the ladder of influence, how we say sometimes, right? But like, you know what? Instead of trying to come in from like the side door and, with like a weird strategy, we just send them a video. He's like, hey, what's up? Hey, we're brothers, Luis and Luis. We would love to have you on the podcast, right? Yeah. And surprisingly, a lot of people are like, wow, yeah, absolutely. You guys have a good energy, which is the other thing, right? You were talking about energy. When you're being honest, upfront, transparent, like that energy reflects that. And I feel like people can actually tell when you're not being, when you're trying to like hide stuff or things like that.
100%.
I mean, I think also like personally, right, in your life, you guys met at Bulbian, and then right after, I think we moved to Fruit Cove area, and there's a coffee shop there that the name was Twisted Compass. They've rebranded now, and they've opened multiple locations, and we connected with the manager, right, and then that connection allowed to an introduction with my wife. And my wife is very private. She's like, she has like 2 friends, and she wants to keep it that way. She's very quiet. She doesn't like the cameras, right? And they became like best friends. And then Fonzie's girlfriend, also we met through that, and now they're all 3 are like really best friends. And then the now they have we have an extended family that now we go to dinner every single week together, like big family. And it's just brought so much joy. So I really want to encourage everybody out there, right? Like if you are intimidated by this, like don't, like lean in and use, what we just talked about, like the intention, and put yourself out there, because you never know really what can happen. And this brought so much joy, apart from the business side and the podcast, in our personal lives as well.
Yeah, so 100%. And the other part of that is just also having the mindset and the intentionality of mutual service. I mean, what else are we here to do, roaming around on this planet, like spinning around this sun like crazy, like, but be of service to each other on this journey.
100%.
And if you approach something of, look, maybe this person could serve me, but maybe I could serve them too. And maybe you lean in with, maybe I could serve them.
Yeah.
And if you're approaching people from that perspective and being vulnerable from, how can I help this? Is there anything I could offer this person, whether it's a smile or something deeper? Then I think things just flow smoother.
Yeah, absolutely. And, this phrase comes to mind, and I've shared here before, is the problem is rarely the problem. The problem is the perspective to the problem, right? And the perspective to the problem we can always control. And, when we talk about approaching other people and stuff like that, usually people think about worst case scenario, like, oh my gosh, what if I go say hi? And, this guy throws me his tiny iPad with a cut of Pax's sticker on the back. Right? I was like we paint all these crazy scenarios that are most, they're not going to happen, honestly. And then like that deters people from interacting. So a lot of times it's that perspective. And I want to make the connection on perspective and challenges, because I know you had a challenging upbringing, right? And I feel like we live in a sense right now in a society that there's a lot of, I don't know the correct word, the proper word, but there's a lot of victimhood, right? Like a lot of people have the perspective that they see the challenges with is that of a set of victims, right? And man, you are, like, your story is super inspiring, right? And clearly your perspective that you're like looking at these challenges with is one of, I'm going to come above my challenges. I'm going to, like serve everybody, the people that I'm, spending my time with. And I'm curious, was it always like that for you? Like, how do you develop that perspective? What are some of the lessons that happened throughout there? And of course, if you can share a little bit of those initial challenges in your life, I think it would be pretty cool.
Yeah, that's very kind of you, Louis. Thank you for that, man. One of my favorite teachers is Eckhart Tolle, and Eckhart Tolle speaks about welcoming the challenge in your life as if you had chosen it. Because it's a custom-made challenge for you from the universe to allow you to grow this next level of growth that you need. Custom-made. This whole universe conspired to create this specific type of challenge for you.
Yeah.
And so welcoming that challenge as if literally you chose it is a beautiful mindset towards challenges. But certainly that wasn't the case in my early life, man. I was born at the age of 8 I moved at the age of 8 out of Lebanon, but I was born the year after the Lebanese Civil War started.
Wow.
So for me, part of my life, part of my body is war, because when my mother was pregnant with me, it was very extreme situations. The first 8 years of my life, it was active, street to street combat.
Wow.
And so that is in the DNA of my family. That is also in my body, and that's been part of my process, is getting familiar with that, processing that, moving that through my body.
Yeah.
But that was the first challenge that we had to overcome. And honestly, I did very little. That was all my mom, man. My mom is a very special woman. I would I would play with it. I would play cowboys and Indians, with my
Yeah.
sisters during the fighting as, we ducked through the building and down to the bomb shelter and things like this.
Yeah.
It was only later in life that I realized the effect of that. And then I had to do the work as an adult
Yeah.
to investigate that.
Yeah. Obviously, not similar story. We grew up in Venezuela, right? But we grew up when, socialism and was taking over with Hugo Chavez, and we saw a lot of the division in society, and we were victims of it. I personally was robbed by cops multiple times. I personally was kidnapped one night. So, like, you have your life, and you have all these experiences, right? And then you come to a new place, and it's a whole new perspective. So I remember the day. We've been very fortunate, obviously, because of sport. We play soccer, and that gave us opportunities to go and experience Europe and play there and live with incredible other players and have amazing coaches. And then that opened the doors to come to America and go to school here in really good schools and play in like really nice grass fields, right? And I remember walking into the locker room. I'm like, this is like being a professional soccer player because you have everything. They give you everything. And
Everything.
You're just so grateful for like that brand new jersey that you get to use every single day in practice and the fields. And we played in dirt. We played in asphalt. We got injured falling in pavement, right? Like it was crazy. And you're grateful for these experiences. And obviously for us, it's been soccer, like the main thing. But it was so hard to see people that have not experienced something different, and then their perception of certain situations that are happening that you're like, this doesn't matter. Like the picture is so much bigger.
Yes.
Why are we wasting time on that? So on our side, I think we've been very intentional in not paying too much attention on that and really focus on ourselves in a sense of like, hey, our goal is to bring our family here, is to provide, is to build opportunities, is to like, and that's how kind of our business has, evolved in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And we really focus on ourselves to then hopefully influence the people that are like very proximity to us. How do you approach that, right? Because obviously your story is very, very intense in that sense. How do you ignore it? What are the conversations that you're having with people? What are you doing to kind of level that? Do you feel a necessity to actually level that, or you're like,
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I want to acknowledge your guys' stories, and thank you for sharing that, Luis. That's tremendous. You guys overcame that adversity, and the beautiful thing is you have the gratitude to know what you have. That's probably one of the best things, man, about facing adversity of any kind is it then gives you the perspective. I think Khalil Gibran, who's also one of my favorite poets and influencers, said the pain that carves the clay allows then the clay to hold the nectar and the fruit. But the pain kind of carves and allows you to know what a whole is and allows you to know what great feels like. So you could walk on the grass field and just not take that for granted. That's amazing. Yeah. So I want to acknowledge that from you guys. Thank you for sharing. I mean, honestly, for me, I never really, it's only now in life that I often tell my story. Like I'll often lead, I was speaking with a potential investor yesterday, and I'll often intro like I did now when I tell my story. Like in my 2 minutes, you hear that I was born in a war and my family had, physical violence and all this that I had to traverse. And now it's part of my story and I wear it on my sleeve and I just tell it. It's part of who I am.
Yeah.
But for many years, that's only in the last, 5 to 10 years as I've been leading people, and I know that people care about who you are and where you're from. And so it's important to tell our story for the benefit of others a lot. And so people know who you are. But for most of my life, I didn't look at any of that, to be honest with you. I looked at where I was today, and I was in the present moment, and I did what the moment called for.
Yeah.
Whatever that may be. In some cases, the moment called for hard work, like collecting cans on the corner with my mother so we could put food on the table, or, running my brother's moving business at the age of 14 and 15 because he was going back to Lebanon to try to find a wife, because that's what you do, So it's like, whatever, what the moment called, or the next moment I was, on Wall Street working for JP Morgan, and the moment called for a nice suit and, interpersonal skills that I had learned in my challenges growing up. So I just looked at that, and it's funny because people recognized my story more than I did. And once they would know where my background is, I had a couple of people along in my life who really believed in me and helped me. And in fact, the day I sold my business, I built this IT business, I sold it. And the day I sold it, I called the guy who was on my board, who was very, very meaningful for me. And I told him, like, hey, you believed in me in a way that was more than I believed in myself.
Oh. Wow.
And in fact, more than my parents ever believed in me.
Wow.
And that belief in me, he knows my story, and he
Yeah.
really believed in me and looked at me and was like, wow, that's a person I want to help.
Yeah.
And so he recognized that background. I didn't really take much stock of it, but these couple of people in my life who believed in me, and their belief just energetically propped me up, and like pushed me forward and allowed me to achieve things more than I could achieve for myself. They recognized my story more than I did.
Yeah.
I just focused on the moment and what it called for.
Yeah. I definitely want to hear more about that, and brings me back to, the first coach that we ever hired for the business. And I remember him saying a lot of the times that he's like, motivation is crap, right? And I was like, I love motivation. I love putting, the motivational videos and the audio and stuff like that. But he's like, you need its environment. You need to, like, motivational is fickle. Like, it'll just go up and down. Like, you wake up and you feel motivated to take on the world. And, by 3 p.m., you just want to take a nap. And, I can attest to that. I love taking naps. Yeah. But he says, but you need is an environment of people that are going to push you forward, right? And I think this one is kind of a little bit of cliche. You're the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with, but it's cliche for a reason, because it's truth, right? It's the truth. Like, when you surround yourself with, people that are bringing value, that are seeing, the best in you, and maybe they're even holding you accountable to some of the things that you say that you want to achieve, to your own goals. Like, that's when, like, growth happens. So I'm extremely curious to know a little bit more about that story on your end. Like, how do you come across these people, right, that started to believe in you? Maybe what was it? Were you too focused in what you were doing that you couldn't see the value that you were providing? And I'm saying this because I believe that, the person that is listening right now, I feel like this is a problem with entrepreneurs, is they cannot really determine their own value in a way, right? And I'm saying this based off of my own experience. When they told me, charge $5,000 for this, I'm like, oh, but am I worth it? That's my first thought, right? Like, is the work that we do, like, worth this amount of money, etc., right? So it's like there's always, like, this battle with self-doubt, and you're also so into it. So I'm curious on, like, how do you came across these people, and also how did they bring this to light to you?
Yeah. Well, part of the challenge that I found, Fonzie, is, we all show up as a range, right? We have the low end of our range and we have the high end of our range. And at the high end of our range, we're amazing. We're confident. We've got swagger. People are attracted to us,
Yeah.
The problem is we also know the low end of the range. We know the insecurity. We know the weaknesses. We know the addictions, the behaviors, whatever it is. So we know that whole range, and I think when we tune into ourselves and think about our worth and self-worth and worth of services, whatever it is, we know the whole picture. These people around us that are the most, accelerating for us are the ones that really just focus in. They accept us in our full range, but they really deprioritize the low end of the range. We tend to over-focus on the low end of the range and how can I make it better. They just see the high end of the range, accept the low end also, but really focus on that high end. And that's mostly what they see in you.
Yeah.
And that's why this guy was able to see in me, like, more than I saw in myself. And the challenges felt too big for me. For him, he was like, because I'd never overcome those challenges. I was facing them for the first time. Yeah. For him, he's like, oh, I've seen this story. This guy's overcome these 5 challenges. Now he's got an even bigger one, but he overcome I see this line. He's going to overcome it. So he's sitting back with confidence. Yeah. With me, I'm like, oh, how am I going to do this? Another big challenge. What do I do here? So I'm in the midst of it. He's seeing the big picture. He's accentuating the highest end of me.
Yeah.
And I think...
Oh, no. I was just going to say, it's like, I'm having, like, these flashbacks with one of our mentors that we had, right? And he's amazing. He actually lives here in Florida. We should do, like, a round table one day. Well, one of those, like, content dinners.
They're coming in August, all
yeah,
4.
that'll be fun. And I remember we were at this podcasting event and they had this awesome party at the end, karaoke and all this stuff. And, everybody's kind of like dancing and he grabs me and he's like, I was actually fresh from my breakup around that time. So, out of that range that you're talking, I was low, right? And just so you know, I still keep the crystal. I have it here in my backpack with it. Yeah.
Amazing.
And he grabs me and obviously like I was a little down, but he grabs me and he's like, just so you know, it's like, you have no idea how much I believe in you guys. I don't know if I told you that story. It's like, no. I don't know. Like, he's like, you have no idea how much I believe in you guys. Like,
was he sober?
Huh?
Was he sober?
I would say, he was maybe a little bit in the party.
Like, it doesn't matter.
In the party, so
I take it.
But I felt the energy, right? Like I felt like it was so genuine. And I mean, we love this guy. He's like one of the most, honestly, greatest persons that has helped us, honestly, with our business and everything. Yeah. And he's not afraid of telling you things as they are. And that comment just meant so much to me, right? I was like, and now, listening to your comment, I'm like, he probably is able to see that range in us, right? And he's able to see what we're potentially capable of, right?
Yeah.
And he sees that we can actually achieve that if we, kind of like go up to that side of that range, right? With also knowing the lower end of the range. And like you said, I think is key to probably bring some awareness personally to that lower side of the range. I did an exercise a while back. It's kind of odd, but it was, you got to stare at yourself in the mirror for 5 minutes without nothing, like no distractions, no nothing. If you look at your phone or anything, if you break eye contact, you have to start the 5 minutes again.
I love it.
And I remember what I took out of that exercise. You have to do it at the beginning of it was like a 30-day challenge, and you have to do it at the beginning and then at the very end. And I remember like I was having a hard time, like making eye contact, and then you have all this, thoughts flowing on you. And I think it's a good exercise, if you're listening right now and you want to potentially take inventory of that range, like what are your lows and what are your highs? Because doing that exercise, those were the thoughts that I was having. I was like, oh man, but I've done this, X, and Y, like, and then I was like, whoa, but I've also done this, and I'm proud of this. And I was kind of like trying to force myself to like stay positive, but then, my mind was shifting to the other side. It was crazy. Yeah. It was so crazy, but I think it's a really cool exercise to get, kind of like help you define that range.
I think that's so important. Awareness, right? In a sense, I've been working really hard with my coach in the last 6 months, most likely. Yeah. And a lot of it has been, are you aware of the situation today, right? Like, for example, those low end moments, like if we're feeling it, there's certain feelings that come with it. There's your body reacts a certain way, like you're acting a certain way. And then what was really hard for me was separate myself from that moment and understand what was happening and kind of press the pause button. And then we're like, okay, I'm recognizing that I'm in a low energy moment, or I'm feeling this way. Why am I feeling this way? X happened. What's the worst it could happen? Like going through that. And this is maybe like a 2-3 minute process mentally, right? Yeah. And it's slowing down, right? Because we live in this world that is ever moving forward. We're always feeling maybe that we're catching up and we're not there, right? And it's just slowing down to be like, we're okay. We're where we're supposed to be. Perfect. This happened. Do I have control over it? Probably not. What do I have control over it? Is like how I feel. How do I realign myself? And that personally has helped me a ton. And what happens also is like in the community and the people that we work with that are putting their message out there, their story out there, right? Yeah. Like if we're putting this and then the feedback that we might get from maybe an audience member that might not align with your messaging, for example, or the keyword warriors, right? That they'll say whatever behind a computer, but not to your face. And that can affect you in those kind of moments. And, we're very passionate about putting your message out there, especially if you have a product or a service or a mission that you want to put and have that conversation with people. That can be a big friction point for a lot of entrepreneurs because they'll see that in a low-end moment, they're not going to be able to recognize it, and then they stop. The action stops, which is what happened a lot in at the beginning of our journey, right? Yeah. With our first podcast that we try to launch, all these things, right? All that friction.
Yeah, Luis, now you're hitting at the crux of it, man. Now you're hitting at the crux of it because along with vulnerability, along with putting yourself out there with your authentic story, is going to come disappointment, is going to come challenges. And whether it's your own low end or it's a new low that you're experiencing emotionally that's imposed on you by someone else's actions, someone criticizing you, which I give you guys a lot of credit, and a lot of credit to the people that are in the content world and are in the public eye. You're always opening yourself up to judgment, to criticism. But the key is that moment of power, of observation. Right? Because in that moment, as soon as you're able to observe and have that separation that's brought about from the observation, you're no longer whatever that emotion is. That's the moment of power, because you go from being wrapped up and being engrossed in anger. I am angry. No, you're not angry. You're experiencing anger.
Yeah.
And when you experience anger, you have power. When you're angry, you're weak. You've lost your power. You're being driven by that emotion, where just that split second that you're talking about, Luis, is so powerful. That little bit of separation between what is happening through you in your body and who you think you are. You're not that anger.
Yeah.
You're the awareness that is able to observe it and see it. And that little bit of separation, there's so much power in that.
What's something?
Wait, I want to say something. When I broke up, it's literally like just like a historical moment in the life of Fonzie. When I broke up, I was at the coffee shop, all tired and sad. You know, I remember we met and we talked for a little bit, and then you had to leave, and I just stayed there doing some work. And hours later, you came back with a book and the crystal that I just talked about. And he's like, "Man, I've been thinking about you, you know, and I want to give you this. It's an important book for me." And it was Untethered Soul, which talks about this exact concept that you're talking about, which is like, you know, this is a very general way to kind of like summarize this, but it's like you're not your first thought, right? You're not like that emotion that comes up, but then once you have the awareness, right, you have the power, bringing the power back to you. So that's a book I recommend to everybody, Untethered Soul. And we can talk about we can do like a book review one day. Let's bring you back to do like a book review.
Now that you're in town, we're gonna do a couple sessions.
Let's do it.
So I've talked to my wife a lot about this, right? And we're very different, right, in many ways. And I was like, it's hard to tell somebody, it's like, just separate yourself from the moment. And it's like, how do I actually do it? So can you help us walk through maybe a couple of tactical things that you can do as an entrepreneur, right? Of how do I actually separate myself from that moment?
Yeah.
For me, has been years, right? Of I'm feeling like I'm identifying a feeling, and I am able to make that decision. It's like, do I stay in this feeling or do I actually go back and observe it, right? But it's not something easy to do.
It's not easy. It's not easy. The key is small steps. And by the way, Fonzie, thanks for bringing that up, man. I'm so glad I went back and I gave you that. That was a moment of vulnerability for me, because I'm like, is this too much of a bromance? Like, well, you know.
Hey, the bromance is real, man.
But
Welcome
like,
to bromance.
You know, man, I feel this guy's heart. He's a great person. I'm going to do this small little thing. I'm so glad I did that. But yeah, Luis, the key is small steps. One thing that I love to begin that journey is awareness of your body. So, you know, as I'm sitting here recording the show with you guys, of course, I'm excited. There's a lot of emotions in my body. There's a little bit of anxiety, but I could also feel my feet on the ground. Like, I know whether I'm on my toes or on my heels. I could feel my body touching the chair, the heat, the extra heat that's in the chair at the point of contact between the body and the chair. And so that awareness of the body actually activates the prefrontal medial cortex that's in this part of the brain, that is the only part of the brain that could allow you to intercept what happens in the amygdala. The amygdala, the reptilian part of the brain, is the part where strong emotions, the fight or freeze, kicks in, and strong emotions bypass the more advanced part of the brain. They literally bypass it. You don't have a choice to make a decision. It goes to your body and it's like, let's get the heck out of here before you have a chance to process it.
Yeah.
The only thing that intercepts that process is that prefrontal medial cortex. And the way you build that muscle is literally awareness of sensations in the body. And so we could talk about why that tool is powerful for many reasons, but you could start right now. Whatever you're doing, feel the feet on the ground. Just try to articulate the temperature of the room on your skin. Like, what can I feel the air is my skin hotter than the room, or is the room hotter than my skin right now? Very small things like that about the body. And that by itself could lead to much more advanced practices in the body, relaxation of the body, that alleviates all. Like, I've been able to help my digestive issues a lot by relaxing the inner muscles of my digestive system, but you don't have to get there. Just start with
If you're interested, we're gonna leave all Charbel's information right below. Just send him a quick DM.
Yeah. He does some really cool meditations, and you talk a lot about this when you do the meditation. So definitely encourage people, if you wanna try them, or just give it a shot. Just make sure you message him.
Yeah. So I think that's definitely one thing. Luis, we could talk about other things, but awareness. People hear a lot about awareness of the breath. Awareness of the breath is important for many, many reasons. One is a lot of us have shallow, incomplete breathing because we have some trauma stored in the body. The body's tight, and we never really realize that we're not actually taking full breaths. So we're operating at less than optimal oxygen capacity. What the heck? That's one of the first things we can do to help our energy system in the body and our life force into the world. So the other thing about the breath is when you breathe, it moves your body. You can't help it. It expands something and something shrinks, like whether you like it or not. So by being aware of the breath, it forces you to then be aware of the body. So, you don't want to feel the temperature on your skin, no problem. But can you know when the inhale is in your body? Is something expanded or no? It has to have expanded.
Yeah.
Did my chest expand? So awareness of that breath. Again, stealing from my teacher, Eckhart Tolle, if you can keep 10% of your awareness at all times inside your body, it's a huge win.
Wow.
Huge win.
That's cool.
Yeah, I think there's a pretty cool takeaway for today's episode too, is trying to, bring in that awareness towards those small things of your body, which I can tell right now because I can tell my fingertips are pretty cold.
Nice. You too. Okay, I wasn't going to say anything. Second in studio session you guys do. I wasn't going to comment about the heat in here, but
it must be this awesome water,
Thank you, Liquid Death,
Liquid Death. So tasty. Thank you guys.
But Charbel, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today.
I will say this. Sorry, before interrupting you, but we're gonna have to bring you for part 2. I don't know if we're gonna stitch these 2 episodes together. Maybe do part 1 and part 2 because, man, you have a incredible story on the entrepreneurial side. You work for one of the biggest consulting agencies in the world. I remember you telling me the stories how you would fly to I think it was Dubai and you guys would come in like a squad into the office. There's a whole bunch of guys suited up, I was like, that sounds so freaking cool.
You know how many times he's shared that story with me? It's like, hey, that guy Charbel, he has this cool story about the suits.
I was like, maybe I should pursue a career in that side.
The corporate SWAT team at McKinsey.
And you went from, that corporate SWAT team to now having your own, first starting your own company and selling it, and then now you started a fund, right? Manifestation Capital, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, exactly.
That you fund, companies that are focused on, body, spirit, health. And I think that's absolutely amazing. I think it's such, from corporate swag from corporate SWAT team to, capital fund that supports this amazing companies that bring intentionality.
It's gonna happen. We're gonna bring him back. Just comment right below, how soon. Just saying.
Tomorrow.
I love it. Let's do it. This has been too fun. I can't believe the time already passed.
I know.
It's so fast.
I think I need to keep scheduling these just to keep seeing you guys. That's how busy you are. That's how dedicated you are.
Yes, let's go.
Just go to the website studiopodcaststudios.com. Just saying plug for this, and whoever wants to come and see the studio. Anyways, but no, Charbel, you're always welcome here, man. It's been
great to be with you
a
guys.
Pleasure. Today was awesome.
So good.
We thought we were gonna go one direction, like always. We go to the other direction, but it's meant to be, right? That's where the conversation.
Maybe we should start another podcast called "Which Direction?" And it's we totally think we're gonna go which way, but we never know. We ended up just going in a whole different ways.
We have people vote before the video actually started. Be like, comment X if you think it's gonna go here. Comment B.
Or in the midst, should we talk about this or this, and have people vote real time?
That'd be so much fun. That'd be great. All right, cool
Okay.
idea for another pod show.
For the Two Brothers show.
The Two Brothers show.
Yeah.
I like
but
that
anyways,
one.
Charbel, is there any last thoughts? Anything that you want to share with the audience that's listening to you, or watching you?
Man, just great to be with you guys here. I'd say, look, when it comes to, I was thinking about this ahead of time. I'm not a big content person, but a lot of the things that we talked about today are, authenticity and vulnerability. Like, be who you are, offer something into the world that's in line with who the essence of who you are is, and be vulnerable about sharing that message. And yeah, if you could work in these things like mindfulness to really empower you and increase your power into the world, small things like the ones that we talked about, attention in your body, could be very powerful.
Absolutely.
So good.
Thank you
Fonzie,
so much.
Anything else?
I'm just grateful, man.
Ah.
Coffee serendipity, it's a thing. I'm telling you, coffee serendipity, it's a thing. I'm so excited, happy that you came here today.
Thank you for having me, guys. So fun.
And I'm just gonna throw this out there, but we need to play some tennis again.
Let's go. Let's go.
I think last time we played, maybe you might have got a little scared or something like that. But
I saw that powerful forehand. As long as you're not kicking the tennis ball, I'll be okay.
I'm telling you, Charbel, doesn't matter what he does, he still loses. It's fine. It is what it is. With that said, guys. Okay, well, that too. But with that said, guys, thank you so much for tuning to the Contents Profit Podcast. Go ahead and follow the show in your favorite podcasting platform and on social media at Biz Bros Co.
That is Random Charbel here, help you move one step closer towards your goal. Please don't forget to share this episode and leave a 5-star review. See ya.
Bye, guys.